Welcome to Unfixed. This podcast explores the intersection of artificial intelligence and the institution of higher education. I am Zach Justice, Professor of Communication Studies and Director of Faculty Development.
I am Nick Janos, Professor of Sociology.
We are employees of Chico State and we will discuss some of our work, but this podcast is not affiliated with Chico State and the views expressed here are not representative of the university. Unfixed is just part of our portfolio. Check out our writing at meltsintoair.org and subscribe to our twice-a-month newsletter where we run down the top AI news stories and connect them to higher education.
Zach, how's it going today?
I am feeling good. Today we are talking about the AI Retrofit.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, the Retrofit is a program that we developed at Chico State. I was consulting with Nick throughout when we sort of laid the groundwork for this, and then he's come in and helped out tremendously several times. But I want to back up and tell you a little bit about the origin story of where this came from. So we run the Retrofit as a 1-week intensive. We do it off cycle, so in January and in May when faculty aren't in classes, and we can sort of get their uninterrupted attention for 4 or 5 days. We spun this up real early days. We were developing this curriculum in fall of 2023, and we launched the first one in January of 2024. So really early in the AI cycle. And we were just looking around at our own courses and hearing stuff from other people, and people were just like, I was doing this, it doesn't work. What do I do? And so we spun this thing up really to address that directly. And it wasn't this sort of aspirational thing. It was just, we have to meet the moment. People are doing stuff. They recognize it doesn't work. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah. I mean, if you all remember, when ChatGPT that first year was just so much uncertainty, so much doubt, so much fear, denial, like all of those emotions like going through. I do want to shout out to Zach though, because I think even earlier in that spring, through our conversations, thinking about how assessment was breaking, how assignments were breaking, you had the insight that it wasn't the assessments, the assignments themselves that were the first place to start. It was like we had to kind of step back. AI is forcing us to like step back, look at your learning goals, your learning outcomes, whether you want to make that formal or informal. Why are you teaching this class? That's really carried through with the way I approach this for all my classes. I don't start with assignments. The Retrofit is really like taking that step back and asking like, what is this class doing?
Thanks, Nick. That was, in some ways, it was one of the central insights for a lot of the work that we've done, which is that the technology has changed the world, not just our class. Remember those early days, there were all these people spinning up guides about what to do, and everything's just focused on something's wrong in your class. Yeah. And something we observed early on was, if you think this is just something that's in your class, you're completely out of touch, because the disruptions are happening all around us in the workforce, in entry-level work, in civic life, all those sort of spaces. And really, this started actually as a blog post on our site. Yeah. And it wasn't me trying to develop a program. It was me just trying to figure out, what do I need to do with my own class? I started with public speaking, and I just developed this approach that was extremely systematic, because that's my brain is very linear. And we eventually, in consultation with you, scaled that up. I do want to give a shout out, Derek Bruff, who does really good work. He recorded a podcast and wrote a great blog post. They're sort of like, he was thinking about some of these same things in parallel, and he was thinking about them, I think, more theoretically, and what we were doing is extremely applied. But I do want to shout out, because hearing what he had to say and reading the stuff that he was writing, it did help me form some of those early days stuff and connect the real practical stuff that I wanted to do with some theory.
Yeah, no, and you joke about being linear and very systematic, but while that's true, I think a lot of what the approach that you and I have developed is also taking seriously the grief and the seriousness of which people take their jobs and the teaching, right? People care deeply about teaching and connecting with students. And in the AI disruption, there was the perceived and real threat that was being broken and destabilized. And that did and does cause a lot of grief. So having a systematic approach also allowed us to have those more human to human conversations with our colleagues about, well, not all is lost. Let's see what we can recover and rebuild. But we need to be systematic about it and intentional about it, right? And that is a process we developed around starting with what still works in your classes, in your student learning outcomes. Why are you teaching this class? Does this need to exist? And what is the students getting from it? And then identifying what's broken, right? And then going from that, that's a hard process, right?
Right.
If you've ever worked with faculty doing this kind of work where you're investigating what they want to do, but what can't happen because of AI or what AI makes very difficult, and add on to that institutional baggage, like, well, we have to do this. It's a writing course. Like, I can't not write in the writing course. Okay, well, let's work on that. So then you move to that process of like, what can I do out of that uncertainty and try to move into some certainty.
Yeah, that's another benefit of the sort of systematic find what's broken with the slows, find what's broken with the assignments, then move to solutions. Is one of the things we both observed with faculty was this initial sense of overwhelm, right? Because they had this thing that they thought was really good, they were invested in it. And then suddenly there's a bunch of stuff that's wrong, and it's just like, I don't even know what to do. It's a whole new world, and it's just the whole thing's overwhelming. And so unless we break that into like little tasks, one thing at a time, it's just too much.
It's too much. It's existential. I mean, I'll just speak personally. Like, I had assignments and workflows in my classes for my students that I've been doing for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I like those. Now, some of the other stuff like reading notes or quizzes and exams, I didn't care. I can get rid of those much easier.
Right.
But there was things I knew that I was doing that I suddenly was like, I don't think I can do that anymore, Zach.
Yeah.
And we'd have private conversations in spring of 23 going like, I think this is done. I think I've run the course. Like, what do I do? And that's that crisis that you go into of like, oh my God, I can't do that anymore. And so developing an intentional way to get out of that has been really productive personally, but also we've now seen it in the people that we work with.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so what one thing the retrofit process intentionally does, the way Zach and I have thought about it and designed it, is it starts with a faculty centered approach. It's not about the tools. It's not one of those, hey, come to a tech workshop and you'll learn about 25 tools. You go home and plug them into your class, right? This is really about who you
Not
are.
hypothetical. We have both been to those
Yes.
things at conferences and have people come to faculty meetings and be like, look at this shiny object. And then it's up to us to like figure out where that fits into our workflow. Oftentimes we never do. But yeah, so we really wanted let's think about teaching faculty first.
It's teaching from faculty expertise, their desires, their goals, and again, trying to avoid that the solution in search of a problem that often creeps up in ed tech. So that's sort of the starting point with our process.
Yeah, and a key part of getting faculty in the door for these things and sort of starting that conversation is we were never evangelists for this tech.
Yeah.
We were not people that were. Sometimes there was a begrudging nature to the work that we were doing and that we were helping other people do. It seemed cumbersome but necessary. And that perspective, it is quite different than the stuff that you hear from a lot of other people in this space that are leading workshops, writing books, and stuff like that. I'm not going to name names, but you know who you are. Super annoying booster AI tech influencers. But you and I were not about that. We recognized that faculty care about teaching, and we weren't here to sell them on a particular tool and say this is good. We were here to help them understand the power of these things and then set out some different options for how they might approach a path forward.
Yeah.
But not tell them this is the thing that you must do, but rather here's a powerful example of how the world has changed, and here's some things that you could do in response. And I want to get really specific about this. The first thing that we do in the retrofit, like literally after we have all introduced each other, is maybe somebody does a quick demo of something with ChatGPT or Gemini, but then we allocate time for people to dump their assignment descriptions into those tools and see what comes out on the other
Yep.
side. And that dedicated time to do that is important. And also, it's shocking to me to this day that we still have people that are just slack-jawed, surprised, and have not done that to date.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you haven't done that
Oh,
yet, now is a good time to do that. It's never too late to go to
right.
ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, put in your assignment prompt. You don't even have to prompt much else. I mean, just start there, like what basic student might do, and see what happens. And even just, it's what, February 2026, the last retrofit. I mean, we're still working with people who this is the first time that they're using generative AI.
And that, I think, is a wake-up call for administrators in terms of the current level of fluency and authority with these tools that a lot of faculty have. And that's not necessarily a criticism of faculty, right? They have lots going on, and they're advising students. They are teaching sometimes half a dozen classes across 3 different institutions. There's a lot to do. The kind of um, stuff that Nick and I have covered in previous podcasts about this technology coming to universities at a moment of maximum insecurity and
Yeah,
faculty overwhelm.
yeah.
But if you Nick's right, if you haven't done that, pause this and go do it.
And another thing was in this moment where when you're working with faculty and they're doing this and they're having that moment of, oh crap, there goes that assignment. That's the other moment where that human to human part of this is so important because we're there with them in the Zoom room, in the person room, in real life, saying, okay, let's talk about this. What does this mean? What can we do? Processing that. So we did an episode about asynchronous online education and some of its pitfalls and benefits. But I really think the retrofit and any kind of in-depth learning community around redesigning classes in the age of AI is best served with face-to-face or Zoom, where people can actually talk in real time and process some of that loss, some of that grief together, and then get their feet on the ground and ready to build and ready to move forward in that.
And I don't think that's hypothetical. We also spun up an asynchronous version of the retrofit. And to date, I think we've had like 160 people sign up and 8 people finish.
Yeah.
It really is a synchronous component that seems to be key.
Yeah.
So let's say you want this for yourself or for your institution. So what we're going to do here is go through what Nick and I think are some good practices for doing this kind of work, taking this kind of approach. But if you don't mind me saying, far and away, the best thing that you could do is go to the book us part of the website and send us a message and then hire us to work with your group or institution. Nick, would you recommend that option?
I would.
We are not good at self promotion, but here we're giving it our best go. So, the retrofit approach, like we said, it's not evangelism. It's not, we're going to get everybody in compliance. Instead, it's very applied. So, we usually spend the first day, like we said, just figuring out what's broken with individual faculty and their course. They're dumping stuff into ChatGPT or into Gemini. They're making notes. They're hopefully talking with colleagues about what's working and not working in their classes, whether or not slows need to change. It's awesome if you can get little mini groups together, 3 people from political science that then are able to work together. Nick, you were talking about the importance of community in these sort of work.
I mean, just there's so many people, faculty out there on their own trying to figure out what to do. They're either asking colleagues, "What are you doing?" and they borrow a boilerplate assignment, and they have no context with that. They just deploy it, but they don't know why it was designed, or they're just going to the internet and trying to find things about, I need help to replace my essay. What do I do? And the benefit of that community is that it's interactive, but it's also a place to ask the questions and get questions answered and test things out together, get that feedback. And we do that a lot in the ones I run where you're show and tell with each other kind of thing.
We get super concrete with faculty about evaluating the disruptions. It's not a vibes thing. We have literal tables that we're having them fill out
Yes.
where they are evaluating an individual assignment and then ranking it based on their own expertise. Is this maximally disrupted? Does this seem fine? And really that first like day and a half is just diagnostic. It's like if you were if your car didn't start, you wouldn't start by just swapping out parts. You would try and figure out, is the battery dead? Does the alternator need to be replaced? Is it out of gas? Right? You wouldn't just start trying things. You would identify the problem first, and that's what we have faculty do during that first day and a half. But it can't be like vague. You have to actually compel them
That
to
is super important.
sit down and go through each slow and think about it, talk it through, what's working, what's not. And we have them talk to alumni and people that are hiring their grads, because faculty don't always have their finger on. For instance, our intrepid podcast producer, Jamie, trains people to go do K-12 education, especially special education. So part of doing that work, if you're working in K-12 environments, is talking to people who are currently teaching in K-12. It's not just like thinking about that into the void. It is talking to actual practitioners.
Yeah.
So after we have them identify what is broken, and that's can I talk about every time? That is a real low point because people get kind of down and depressed when they're just like making a list of everything they were doing that doesn't work anymore. But then we start to see the light on the other side, because then we start introducing solutions. And not all the solutions are AI solutions. As Nick said, some of them are, here's a way that you might work around the technology. Here's a way that you might work with it. We've developed an assignment matrix where you're sort of mapping, okay, I was doing reading quizzes to make sure they had read something. What are some things that I might do now that would accomplish some of those same goals?
Yeah. Yeah. That's my, I mean, it's the favorite part was when we start building it, we start putting things together. And then at the end, having something to show for it is, I think, important, where faculty can come away by the end of the week, or if you're running like a multi-week thing, and they have something to deploy. So I did an FLC. It was 7 weeks last semester with co-run with Leanna Gordon and sociology here at Chico. We did it for other behavioral social science faculty. And my favorite thing was halfway through, someone was like, I took the assignment I created last week and I deployed it in my class yesterday. And it went really well. And then, but he said, oh, but there's these things that I kept getting in the responses where people said this or that. I was like, perfect. Change it, iterate it. You can't launch it again this semester, but he's going to try it again the next semester. So it's like that, watching that new tangible thing that you can actually use, super important as well. Not a bunch of just ideas.
Totally, Nick. And that's one of the reasons why we really emphasize they have to keep track, right? They have to fill out these tables. They have to, if there's a slow that needs to change, but that slow is actually controlled by a curriculum committee or an accrediting body, part of what they're doing is drafting an email to whatever organization or group of people controls that and saying, I think this needs to change, and here is why.
Yeah.
They're drafting different syllabus language. If you haven't caught on so far, part of what makes the retrofit work is that we give people time to do the work and experiment on their own. We're not talking at them for 7 hours. Instead, there's like 15 minutes of instruction. Then people are working individually. Then they're working in small groups. We're recollecting them. There's another 30 minutes of instruction, and on it goes. It's one of the reasons why this works. They leave with changes that they trust, that they can start iterating on, and they leave with a record of what it is that they have done, because we've all had that experience. You go to a conference, you do something, you have a bunch of great ideas, but then it's 2 months later and it's time to implement those into an article that you're writing or a class that you're teaching, and you just don't recall that much of it in very much detail.
Yeah, I think it's not the time. Ideas are great, but that if an idea is not leading to a tangible thing, I don't think we have the time for that. The work is too urgent in the redesign of our curriculum, of our classes, and our assignments. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest pitch I have to people when they ask me is that you will leave with real things you can deploy, or at least half of things that you're going to work on, then deploy, whatever that happens to be.
So we do know that this scales. We run it 5 different times, up to 50 people in a go. There are about 950-ish instructional faculty at Chico State. and I think just under 200 of them have been through some version of the retrofit, which is a pretty significant chunk of the
Yeah.
faculty at this point. And we've also seen this deployed at different institutions, and they put their own twist on it. And some of those good ideas we have grabbed from them and then brought back in with the stuff that we're doing. But Nick and I are really good at facilitating this kind of work. Again, you can look for us in the book us portion of the website. Someday that's going to feel natural, but today's not the day. Um, but other people can do this, and we've seen other skilled folks, thoughtful folks deploy this effectively.
Yeah. And then the last point on that is that, you know, it's great to hear someone talk about AI in higher education. It's a completely different thing when you're getting your hands dirty and building stuff.
Yeah, it's this. We didn't design it like this, but in some ways, the retrofit is our reaction to this whole sort of influencer class of people that are talking about higher ed and artificial intelligence. And, they all have ridiculous facial hair and are talking about things like redefining college or what does it mean to be educated and stuff like that. It's like, okay, that's cool, but like I need to teach my first year students how to write.
Mhm.
How does that help
Yeah.
me teach them how to write?
Right.
And there's such a gap between these big picture ideas that these people love to spout off about and then the lived experience of faculty in the classroom. That's where this lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
So that does bring us to irresponsible speculation. This is so irresponsible. I'm springing this on Nick right now.
Uh-oh.
So I think it's possible that this work, some version of this work, becomes necessary, becomes sort of like table stakes at institutions to the point where we start labeling courses with whether or not they have been adapted for this era, right? Like we have different things in our course catalog, like a leaf for sustainability or an indication this is a zero cost course, meaning that you aren't paying for your textbooks. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to say that we should have this, but I can imagine a future where an institution starts to let students know in advance this is a course or a program of study where there has been an investment into how does this older curriculum work in a world with AI.
I love it. Yes, I know there's a lot of obstacles there and things about that idea that many will find repulsive or problematic.
Yeah.
But I think this is where we're at. We're having these conversations in the trenches already about, look, I'll put it directly here. If you're a student and there's one faculty who's just assigning essays in a class and another faculty who's redesigned their class for the age of AI and whatever that way that looks like, and you want to find the easiest way to your degree, you take the class that hasn't been redesigned, Zach, because you can just dump that professor's stuff into the ChatGPT and knock it out within an hour and be done with it. Because that's where we're at. If you're serving students the old way that can just be gamed with AI, then you're actually degrading the part of that program, I think.
Yeah.
I'll put it that strongly. I think
that is strong. But I think that you're right. Like if a student has a choice, and right now they probably have that choice informally. They're having those conversations. They're reading reviews online.
Oh, absolutely. They read reviews and talk about our classes. We know that this is how it is. They talk and they go into different classes for different reasons. And those are varied across all the different ways that students might find things appealing or not appealing. But I mean, it is strong to say that. But it's like we're not, like I said, there's no mandate to use AI.
Right.
The urge here is that we adapt and redesign and rethink our curriculum, our classes, and our assignments.
There's a next level to this with irresponsible speculation where if students are self-selecting, you have students that are purely credential seeking and looking for the easiest path. And so then they are self-selecting into classes and programs of study where there have been no changes made and they know they can just skate. We are going to start having a really different experience with students because then that means that students that are here and their motivation is to learn, they are going to be self-selecting in. So not only are the classes going to be different in terms of the content, But the student populations, we're
Yeah.
going to start to basically have two different student populations at universities.
Yeah. And I'll put it one further. There'll be students who don't want to interact with AI, and they'll find programs that don't. Or, so these are going to be sorting mechanisms. But I do think the minimum is that we've looked at the curriculum, we've looked at our SLOs, we've looked at all of that and started to make those changes. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. You can find our writing on meltsintoair.org and on LinkedIn, Zach Justice and Nick Janos. Find these links and more in the show notes. If you have feedback or want to share an idea, email us at unfixed@meltsintoair.org. Thank you to Jamie Gunderson for producing and editing the show.